This is the trial of John MacArthur, the cessationist. I recently watched a video where John MacArthur states he is a cessationist. And for those who do not know what cessationism is the belief that the gifts of the Spirit have ceased. And the main version of it states that there is no need for the gifts of the Spirit since the Bible is finished, or the canon of Scripture has been sealed. This might seem like an arbitrary statement, but what does the Bible say about John's belief? Can we gather testimony from the prophets, the apostles, and maybe even Jesus himself? Whether John's belief of cessationism is true, or whether John's belief in cessationism is false. Exhibit 1. Did Jesus believe that the gifts of the Spirit would be finished at the sealing of the canon of Scripture? In speaking about the last years of human history, Jesus in the Gospel of Luke talks about the many signs and trials, earthquakes, plagues, famines, terrors, that will engulf the soon-to-be ending world. He also speaks about his followers being dragged before kings, governors, and leaders of the synagogues. And then Jesus says this, "Make up your minds not to prepare beforehand to defend yourselves, for I will give you utterances of wisdom, which none of your opponents will be able to resist or refute." Luke 21:14-15. If Jesus believed that the gifts of the Spirit would cease after the canon was sealed, then how could he, over almost at least 1700 years later, after the canon had been sealed, send his Spirit of wisdom? If Jesus believed in cessationism, then he would have not made this prophecy about what would be happening in the final moments of human history. Exhibit 2. John, in his YouTube video that I have attached in the comments section, appeals to the fact that there were cessationists from the earliest times of Christianity, and infers that this is why the doctrine should be approved. But when did church tradition ever become a way to validate church doctrine? In fact, Jesus testifies again in Matthew, which shows Matthew 2 is against such a belief. "This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching the doctrines and commandments of men." Heretics lived in all ages, including the early ones. So far we have Matthew, Luke, and Jesus refuting John MacArthur's argument. Is there anyone else? Exhibit 3. John MacArthur rebukes himself. At 3:14 in the video that I have posted in the comments section, John claims the Spirit can quicken when someone reads the Bible. How can the Spirit quicken if the gifts of the Spirit have ceased? Doesn't quicken, in the context John has used it, really mean a word of knowledge? I think God's Spirit purposely allowed John to make this mistake, so that the most substantial criticism against cessationism would come from the one trying to rebuke it, John. Finally, Exhibit 4. Again, Luke in Acts quotes the prophet Joel. "And it shall be in the last days," God says, "that I will pour forth my Spirit on all mankind, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even on my bondslaves, both men and women, I will in those days pour forth my Spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will grant wonders in the sky above, and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun will be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and glorious day of the Lord. And it shall be that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved." How long will God pour forth his Spirit? All the last days, according to Joel. This goes well with what the Apostle Paul teaches regarding when cessationism starts. Yes, Paul believed in cessationism, and he believed it had a starting point. He says, when perfection comes. Paul says, love never fails, but if there are gifts of prophecy, they will be done away with. If there are tongues, they will cease. Cease is where cessationism's root comes from. If there is knowledge, it will be done away with. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial will be done away with. Nothing is perfect now. All you got to do is look around. But at the resurrection, when we will say, O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? Then perfection has arrived. The gifts of the Spirit were given to take everyone who loves God out of a lack of knowledge. The lack of knowledge, John, that Satan uses to try to destroy us. The gifts of prophecy takes us out of a lack of knowledge about the future. The gifts of tongue takes us out of a lack of knowledge about another language. And if you've ever had to learn another language or study another language, you know how hard it can be. All the gifts are given to make the lack of knowledge that Satan uses to try to destroy us easier to deal with. And they cannot be taken away from anyone, even the best theologian on the planet. Do you think John is guilty or innocent? Do you have any exhibits to add? Let me know in the comments section. If you want to help me fight the evils of cessationism, please like and share this on your social media pages.